Thank you all for joining us today. This is Jane. Jane actually her work is on view in the She Is Here show, and she was a previous studio artist a couple of years ago and has since returned with this new cohort of studio artists. So she creates sculptures, and she also has mixed media involved in her practice as well. And without further ado, here is Jane.
Thank you so much, Nisa. Thanks everyone for being here. I'm super excited to talk to you on this beautiful Saturday. I don't know if you can tell how bright and sunny it is outside, but I think everyone's feeling good because it's a really beautiful day here in Atlanta for those of you who aren't here. I just moved into this studio a few weeks ago. I will show you around at some point, actually. We'll walk around and look around the studio. But I will kind of do this as an artist talk where I share screen and show some images that way. Because a lot of my work is the kind of work that wouldn't just be sitting in my studio. Lately, I've been working on So I work in many different media. So for the purpose of what we're talking about today, I'll be talking about some sound and video work I've been making this summer and fall, and also some sculpture that is related to that work as well. Okay, so just to give you a little background on my art practice, I'm a teacher. I teach sculpture and new media at Georgia State and at Emory. And I think that being constantly involved with academic environments really influences my practice. I have a very research-based practice where I tend to work in one vein and explore that in different iterations for a long time. I also just really love to play in many different media. Some of the things that I'm working on that I won't be showing today, just for the sake of time, include screen printing and making rugs by hand. These are a few things I've been doing as well. So I tend to be a dabbler in many different media. And I recently finished up a master's degree at Art Institute of Chicago. And some of the work that I will be sharing is directly from some of the research that I did for my thesis this summer. So my thesis show was just this July, which was very weird timing. And I think all of the work was definitely influenced by kind of the inseparability of our lives to the political and just all the climates of, our way of moving throughout the world right now. So I edited together a little bit of video, and I read a bit of the thesis paper actually over it to give you kind of an explanation of this. So pardon the tone being rather thesis papery, but I kind of think there was this perfect chunk of information that I thought would be good to get us started today. To give you an idea of this work. So I'm going to share screen. Oh wait, stopping share. Going to share screen again with the sound. Okay, here we go. Okay, so this will be about 4 minutes. It's kind of a long time considering we only have 30 minutes together, but I kind of enjoyed the idea of slowing down the pace of this a little bit and just spending a little bit of time deeply watching some video work. So here we go. Oh, actually, before I do that, I do want to give you a little background. Okay, so my thesis paper was called Deep Sound. And besides the thesis, this is also just a large vein of work that I've been making. And it has to do with using the structure of swimming and the actual physical properties of a swimming pool as an allegory for navigating marginalized identities in a culture that doesn't always allow room for that. So I will be talking a lot about queerness as far as the surface of the water being this allegory for things being one way above and below the water. And so, yeah, there's the background on that. And so I'm interested in making sounds from water, recording sound underwater. And I also sometimes write performance scripts for performers to create in the water. So this video I'm about to show you is a collage of 2 older videos where I'm reading something over it, videos I made a couple of years ago. And then the last video in this set is like a brand new video that I made just a couple months ago. So here we go.
In synchronized swimming, the action and music above water are the external, what is to be seen by a public audience and judges, the straight and normative narrative. Underwater, the listening mirrors the action in that it is tactile, messy, and personal. Though the sport is marked by its slicked-up symmetrical hair, stylized, drag-esque makeup, and precision movements above water rendering each participant functionally anonymous, to move in such specialized ways involves a highly individualized series of forces, embraces, and interpersonal support under the surface. Each swimmer must pursue ease and efficiency with the unique physics of their own body underwater, which often looks like chaos and difference, to present this highly stylized sameness above. Queerness permeates not only from the overt gender play of the mask gestures and ultra-femme styling, but also from this inner and outer facing inherent in the relationship of the movement and the sound. Each shifting modes above water and below the surface, a simultaneous sinking and diverging. While these modalities may relate tangentially to code switching or passing, both common roots of queer camouflage for privacy or for survival, they're even more akin to the generalized groundlessness of finding one's own alternative route within, despite, outside, right now. There is listening and moving as an action of original creation. There is no learned template. In a New York Times article about synchronized swimming, specifically on the potential of physical danger from moving with such force in close proximity underwater, swimmer Sarah Urka says, "We make it look pretty above the water, but below, it's a battlefield." This is the last video I will show, and I would like you to know something particular about the sound you're hearing. I wrote a very gentle, minimalist score for this video on piano, and then went back to a pool to play the piano sound from a speaker underwater and record it again, while jumping in over and over again using a hydrophone, which is a very sensitive underwater microphone originally made to listen to long-range dolphin sounds. While recording the sound for this video, fireworks happened to keep erupting across the Atlanta sky, making sounds that would last an extra long time in the water. I will leave you with the final performance score from my thesis. A sense to hold softly in your mouth. The nuanced and delicate love that you can feel for someone mutually, though you know you won't be together and are grateful you never got the chance. Except you're both a pair of gloves each and can only feel but not locomote. You are an unwilling expert at longing for a match, even better at literally holding hands. Both performers hold 2 cartoonishly oversized handmade gloves made of pastel worn-in canvas. One performer puts gloves on the other, one at a time, carefully buttoning the buttons that are an effort due to the size and the floppiness of the painted canvas material. The now gloved performer takes off one glove to have the dexterity to fasten the buttons of the other performer. One glove, then the other. Now 3 gloves are on. To attempt to put on the 4th, the original glove applier must take off one glove. 4 gloves all on is an impossible scenario that can't be held, only aspired towards, like a plotted curve approaching infinity, like a ball of mercury running from your fingertips on your emerald green carpet.
Okay, so that last bit, that was just one person in the water. That was me in the water. I had originally planned a project for this summer that was other performers in a pool together. And this was around July that I wanted to film this. It was actually getting quite near July 4th, which is why I accidentally recorded a bunch of fireworks underwater. And so I ended up adapting the performance script to be for just one person, which was a really interesting exercise. And the piece became completely something else that other than what I thought it would be. It's still a work in progress. The pool that I actually filmed this in, I borrowed from somebody that I know through Atlanta Contemporary, Nancy Huff. Somebody told me that she had a pool that she let people use for some like art party or something. So even though I hadn't seen her in years, I wrote her an email being like, can I jump in your pool clothed with my camera sometimes this summer? And she was like, yeah, sure. So I had I usually make projects very collaboratively, and this one was so different because I had like these adventures that were kind of these journeys, getting all of my camera gear and my sound gear together and going by myself. I had to like tie some of my little barbells, like working out weights, to the camera to keep it down in the water in a waterproof bag. And so it like wobbles and I started thinking of it as like another performer because I could only control it to an extent. And the leftover footage that I got was sort of the result of that. This is still a work in progress, but I wanted to show you some short clips that I edited together of this work. And I'm going to be quiet while it plays because I was thinking of the pool and a person swimming as kind of an instrument, and I was really interested in the sounds that it makes. So here we go. So it's a little bit hard to hear depending upon what your computer speakers are like, but the natural reverberation of the pool makes this like heartbeat like rhythm. All spaces have acoustic properties to them, and pools are really unique in that they take the sound from the air and they process it in a way that continues to repeat the sounds and starts to have almost like a reverb effect, like a reverb that you would use in digital music editing that happens very naturally in a pool because of the way the sound carries. So I'm new to my explorations with using a hydrophone. I only started working with it last fall through a project that I did with Flux at Ponce City Market that was called Silent Like a Waterfall, where I mic'd up a fountain and it made a feedback loop using this microphone. So it's still very new to me, but I'm learning things all the time about sort of the super unique properties of recording sound in water. And I've also been thinking about the swimming pool, not only as a site of like literal swimming and sort of unpacking all of these experiences that I had as a college synchronized swimmer at UGA. That sort of, I didn't relate that to my art practice at all for a long time until I realized I was like making performances with people holding each other under the water, and then was like, oh, these things are very related, the synchronized swimming practice, to my current performance and video practice. But I started thinking about weight and weightlessness. And even though this work seems very serious, I also have, I have a very playful way of working and of thinking of this subject matter, and I like to play with materials a lot. So now we're gonna walk around my studio because I wanna show you something. Here we go. So here's my beautiful studio. I'm so excited to be here. I have a ton of space. It's very bare, as you can see, which is kind of nice for now. I'm gonna bring you over here to show you a sculpture that I made from casting concrete inside an inflatable, like a swimming pool raft. So this guy is very heavy. As you can see, like the weight of the concrete made the raft kind of bend. Like the gesture of it is very sort of heavy and slumped. This work is kind of almost opposite from my video work in that it's very fast and unpredictable. And like this motion of this raft is because I was pouring concrete in it in my backyard and like draping it over a pile of logs actually to have it like have a shape. So that is like the cheapest bag of Home Depot concrete. And I was just trying to see like what it would do inside the swimming pool inflatable. And when I started this process, I was kind of amazed at like how effective the concrete would take and hold a shape, even very inexpensive concrete. So I started taking all of these things associated with the pool. Like this is a little pineapple drink holder thing. And so I made this like very exaggerated drink lamp by just pouring the concrete right into that pineapple and cutting it off. And then the straw like lets the thing out the bottom. And so that brings me to the last thing that I want to show you, which is the piece that I currently have on display inside the Atlanta Contemporary right now in the show called She Is Here. Is a large version of these smaller concrete pool casts. And let me just share screen and pull that up. So the two curators, who are very awesome to work with and sweet people that I didn't know until I started working with them on this, they were like, oh, we've seen your small concrete casts. Can you make us a huge one? And I was like, sure. This is a skill that I've learned from being an art handler and working in theater sets, to sort of like agree to do the thing and then figure it out later. And so that's what I did with this, because I really wanted to scale up large with this, but it's not something that I had done. So with scaling up large, it became a little more complicated, but the process of making this was really fun and kind of bonkers. So this is the finished piece. It's concrete and plaster on the trunk here. And then it's a special kind of plaster called hydrocal that is like a really kind of dense and detailed plaster to do the palm fronds up top. I thought it would be fun to just show you through the process of this piece, and then I will be sure not to talk too long because I want to leave room for questions if you have any. So to do the top, I like cut the top off from the base to pour it separately. And first I made this steel, this little steel armature inside. So an armature is in sculpture is like some kind of inside frame that is used to keep everything from collapsing. So I took some steel and I made like the shape of the inside of the palm tree. And so I had to untape it and then tape it back together. And I actually used another inflatable like baby pool to hold everything up when I poured the plaster into the leaves so that it could dry nice and like domed like that and it wouldn't collapse open. So that was a solution because I had this other baby pool around that I had been thinking of casting. It ended up coming in handy. So the next thing, I wanted to show you that before it was peeled off so that I could show you the completed top. This is the Georgia State Sculpture Studio. It's usually a lot cleaner than this, but it's summertime, which means like the grad students and the professors like spread out and make a mess. But so here was that same image, but just with the actual inflatable peeled off. And then for the trunk part, okay. So for this part, there was a tube up the middle. I put like a steel pipe in the middle, but it was so inexact. Like my boyfriend, Jake, and my son, Jack, came with me to the studio and we would mix these buckets of concrete and just pour it in. And we realized we kind of had to like hold up its little outfit to let the concrete go in there and dry. So we would pour like maybe a foot of it or like 6 inches of it. And we had to do a bunch of smaller pours because it was getting really bulgy. As the concrete was drying and heating up, it was like stretching. So we realized quickly we couldn't pour it all at once lest it become like a sphere. So the process itself was teaching us as we went. And I don't know like what I would have done without my boyfriend and my son helping me, because I thought I was just going to go in there and do this all by myself, but like it started to get out of hand quickly. And then this was like when we started peeling it open to see what it looked like inside. And the interesting thing was like the way that the water would seep around the outside made the pigment do this really crazy, like swirly kind of thing, because the water wants to travel along that plastic in a super specialized way. And then this is a little video of us like pulling the inflatable off to look at what was underneath. And I really love working big this way, and I hope to do some more of these concrete sculptures soon. This one is very rigid and upright the same way that like you would expect the inflatable palm tree to look. I'm also interested in doing some more that have like a more drapey, bowing gesture.
It looks crazy where the tape was.
So
Because it like.
That's it. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, shout out to Nancy. Yes. Nancy, thank you for the pool.
Yeah, sorry, I had to give her a little shout out.
I know.
So I think I heard Jake saying that where the tape was made it look crazy. So was the tape on the exterior there to ensure the structural integrity of the palm kind of base, or
yes.
Was it there? Yeah.
Yes. So what I did is like I really enjoy like how the joints of an inflatable have all of these like rumples and really cool details. And this piece was so big and it was such a tube that I took some like gaffer's tape or like spike tape, which is used a lot of times in like, I don't know, music venues and stuff, because it's made to be like removable in a certain way without leaving residue. And I traced the painted lines on the outside of the palm tree inflatable because I was hoping that the tape would give like some kind of a little texture. I had no idea how much it would be instrumental in holding the thing together until I started pouring, and it was like seeping between the paint. So that was something that I did on purpose to add a little bit of texture, and it ended up adding a very deeper texture, which I enjoyed. And part of this process is a little bit of the like, there's some planning that I can do, and then there's the reality of the materials. And I think that it's a really enjoyable process because of its unpredictability.
Mm-hmm. Did your planning include making smaller iterations of the palm tree? So you went from like making these smaller concrete pieces to this large piece. Was there anything in the middle, or did you just jump?
No, there's nothing in the middle. Although, you know, what's kind of funny is like the large piece itself was kind of the middle because I had to pour it in little bits. So like I poured each like palm frond or whatever, I poured each of those individually. And so even though it was large, it kind of felt like I was learning how to scale up as I was doing it, if that makes sense.
Right. Does anyone in our audience have any questions for Jane? We have 4 minutes, so I'd love to take some questions from you all. Or I can ask some more of my own, but I'd like to hear y'all. All right, so Jake says, would love to hear about how working with pools, water, flotation in both video and audio and sculptural works informed each other, how the different media talk to each other and through this thread.
Yeah, so besides the obvious link of all of them being like thematically related to swimming pools, I think that there is this much more like nebulous interest that governs them both, which is working with things planned and also inviting a little bit of chaos. So with the video works, I have a performance script that is usually only somewhat possible to be performed in water. So then there's always like an adaptation of like, okay, here's this script, but what are we really going to do? So the day of the filming, the footage is a lot different than I thought it would be. So there's always this sort of like improvisation along the way. And so I think that mindset of like the performance scripts and of collaboration is invited into the sculptural process by choosing to like sort of learn the process on the go and choosing not to maybe use, sometimes I choose like not the best material for something, right? Like I started casting with really cheap concrete because I was curious, like, would that work just as well as like if I went to the sculpture store and got the casting stuff? So yeah, I think there's a little bit of experimentation and improvisation in both of the ways of working that really relate to each other.
All right, we have one more question from your neighbor downstairs in Young. She says, hi, Jane, love your work. What is your next project?
Thank you. In Kyung, I love your work too. Oh my gosh. So my next project is that I kind of want to make some mid-sized or smaller of these concrete pieces. I really enjoyed this process so much. And even though I've made a few of them, I think there's still so much for me to learn with it. I'm actually curious about flocking, like covering the concrete, at least partially, in a spray-on like velvety medium. Because the pieces themselves have this like soft versus hard look. Like they look squishy, but they're ultra hard because they're concrete. So I've been curious about what other materials could like really push that further. So I want to make a palm tree that really looks like it's like dipped in velvet for half of it, and then the concrete comes out of half. So I've only gotten so far as to like watching a bunch of YouTubes on how to flock things. And flocking is sort of like a 70s craft, but I don't know why I haven't seen it in sculpture more. I'm really excited about it.
Awesome, thank you. Katina, our board chair, says, thank you for sharing your space and your art creation today, and welcome to the AC Studio Artist Program. Velvet rules.
Sweet, thank you so much.
With that said, thank you all for showing up and sharing your time and space with us, especially Jane. I know it's very interesting navigating studio tours. Mm-hmm. So this is your first one back. So thank you for.
Yeah, this was so much fun. Thank you everyone for being here.
Awesome. We will see you all tomorrow if you want to check out the next half of these studio tours. And until then, bye.
Thank you, Nisa. Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Thank you, Jane.